Hey, welcome back to learning the programming language C++. Control structures allow programmers to determine the order in which certain instructions are executed. All control structures rely on Boolean statements to determine whether a certain behavior is executed. Examples of control structures include if-else statements, switch case, and loops for while, do-while. If you want to learn conceptually about control structures, it is useful to understand Boolean algebra. If-else is a decision-making tool in programming. It helps the computer decide what to do based on certain conditions. Think of it as making choices in real life. If it's raining, then take an umbrella. Else, leave the umbrella at home. The program on the right is an if-else code to grade a student's score according to the rubric. Take a look at it and try it on your own. You can also chain multiple if-else statements to create ranges of decisions. The syntax for it is at the bottom. You'll notice that we have a similar syntax for our program on the right. Switch is a more organized alternative to if-else. The if statements are switch statements where an expression is evaluated and compared to each case. If a case matches, the code segment within the matched case is executed and exited if the code contains a break statement. If there are no matches, a default section is run which is similar to the else statement in an if-else structure. Here's the syntax for the switch statement. We have multiple cases with break statements in them so that we don't get stuck in an infinite loop, and a default statement in case we have no matches. Let's learn about loops. There are three types of loops: for loops, while loops, and do-while loops. For loops, loop an instruction for a user-defined value and increment a variable by the user-defined value. It's often used for a known number of iterations. Here's the syntax for it. We set a start value to the variable, a stop condition, and the iteration condition. While loops execute while a Boolean statement is true. It's often used when the number of the desired loops is unknown. Here's an example of a while loop. It loops and iterates while the Boolean statement is true. Do-while loops execute the instructions in a loop first before checking the condition at the end. It's often useful for menu-style applications. Here's an example of a do-while loop. It executes the body of the loop first, checks the while condition, and loops if the while statement is true. Let's learn about functions. What are functions? Functions are reusable blocks of code that perform specific tasks. They help modularize code, making it more readable and maintainable. Functions take inputs, parameters, and return outputs, return values. Why do we need them? Code reusability. We can write it once and use it multiple times. Modularity helps break large programs into smaller, manageable parts. Readability improves code organization. Debugging, easier to isolate and fix errors. Here's the syntax for a function. We start with a return type which specifies the type of value the function returns, then the function name which is an identifier we use to call or reference the function, and then include the parameters we want to pass within parentheses, then include our code within the body of the function, and finally, we have our return statement which sends the result back when the function is called. Here's an example to help you understand it better. Now that we have a function, how do we call it? Here's an example of how. When the function is called using its function name and passing the necessary parameters, the function executes and runs in the background with the inputs given and returns the result. Now, you may have noticed we are passing more than one parameter to the function. While passing more than one parameter to the function, make sure they don't conflict. A string and a number cannot be added, so if we're writing an add function, we can't use a string and an int data type. Here's another example for you to better understand functions with multiple parameters. That's all for this lesson. I'll see you in the next one.